You see these guns, right? You see both of them? Red one, blue one. Check this out. Check this out real quick. Hold on, let me make sure you guys can see it. You guys see that screen? All right, cool. Now, why is it that when I aim towards the top left, everything looks all screwy? Look at that. But then when I put it here, everything looks all nice and clean. But anyway, in this video, you guys are gonna watch me try to build this game on Unity, trying to use this Aimtrak Lightguns, and you know, you're gonna watch me, you're gonna get it popping. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I know you young kids play a lot of 3D games. Not like how I did back in my days when we played like Duck Hunt and them 2D games. I mean, check out this cool 3D shooter game, right? So cool. Now, I'm gonna make a 3D game that you can actually play with light guns, not all those classic games. And I got these two Aimtrak guns. I got them from Aimtrak and they work just like as good as any mouse, but I'm tired of playing old games. Let's look at this gun. It's a USB gun. It's got the light camera or the light IR camera in front of it. It's got a trigger. It's got a button on the left side of it, and over to the right side, there's like another button in there, so you can just do multiple action. USB cable. It's just a regular USB gun. Just take it, plug it into your PC, and you're pretty much good to go. Now, just like every other mouse, I think everyone who's used a PC nowadays has used the mouse. That's pretty much what these guns are. So I decided to open it up just to see some of the guts. You know what I mean? Just see the internals, system internals, and all the components in there. It's got a trigger, it's got a couple of buttons in there, and a camera. So here's the actual IR blaster. And that blaster shoots out IR, so the gun just reads the data that comes from that blaster. And once you can see the data, yeah, basically as you can see here, it's like a mouse. You can aim up, aim down, click, do whatever you want to do. You just basically got a mouse in the shape of a gun. That's just another way to describe it. Okay, so let's look at this gun. Let's look at some of the components. Here's an IR camera, buttons and trigger, right? Now, all of this are connected to a USB cable. So the data that comes from the camera, the buttons and the trigger gets redirected to the USB hub, which the USB hub in there actually pushes that data out to the PC. So from the PC's point of view, here's where we begin. So how does the IR camera work? Like I said earlier, there's an IR camera built into this gun, and the IR camera is meant to look at the IR blaster. So if you look inside the gun, there's this IR bar or IR blaster that the camera just kind of aims at. The bar, typically you place it on top of your monitor like you see here, and the camera just looks at it. Now, unlike the Sindel gun, if you guys have seen that Sindel gun on YouTube, it's got like a special actual video camera that when you're playing games, it looks at the white borderlines around the game to like let you know where you're aiming at. The Aimtrak gun is a little different. It just looks at the IR blaster and it uses the IR blaster to know its location. So let's get this rundown. You've got the x-axis, the y-axis. That pink dot in the middle represents the IR bar. So as you move the gun around, you can see it's moving around to like different values. So here's like a real image. This pink dash represents the IR blaster, and here's the x-axis, here's the y-axis, right? So watch what happens when I move it around. As you can see right now, x is at value 0 and y is at 1. So once I look up, you can see right now x is at 0, y is at -3. So if I just aim down a little bit, you can see, here we go. So x is at 0 and y is at 4. Now let's look a little bit to the left, actually to the right. Now you can see the x value change. X is now at -5 and y is at 1. And if we aim the other direction, we can see, there you go, right there. Bam! 4 and 2. All right, cool. Okay, so what did we learn from that illustration? We learned that pink dash represents the IR blaster that I showed you, and the X and Y value goes through that camera. Those numeric values goes through the camera, goes through the USB hub, and then it actually gets sent to the PC. Now let's look into your Windows PC to see what's going on. I think most people have a mouse and a keyboard plugged into their Windows PC, and data comes out of your mouse and your keyboard and it goes into a Windows driver. So that's where everything goes in. And in your Windows PC, we have Unity that runs in there. So we've got this DLL file, which basically means a Windows Dynamic Library file. And that's how Unity pulls data from your mouse and your keyboard. So when you make a game in Unity that utilizes the mouse and the keyboard, it's actually pulling them from the Windows driver with the help of a DLL. So here we have this light gun, right? This Aimtrak gun. And how are we gonna get this to work in Unity? Like I said, it's just regular USB cable. Here I am, plug it in, and we're gonna try to see if we can pull some of the data that comes out of that gun into the Windows driver, so we can finally see if we can make our own game in Unity. Alright, now let's install the driver for this light gun. Like I said earlier, it's made by a company called, is it Ultimark? Yeah, Ultimark. I keep getting confused between Ultimark and Aimtrak. Alright, so it's Ultimark. The gun is actually Aimtrak light gun. So I go on their website. It's a company based out in the UK, and I need to download one of their drivers. If you just kind of click there, scroll down, down, there it was right there. So download Aimtrak configuration utility. Now I'm going to install this, and here it is. It's all installed, and this is basically the Aimtrak utility that allows you to configure your light guns. You can plug in multiple devices. I just have two devices, the red one and the blue one. You can calibrate. Once you're done, you can apply changes, check the firmware. But here's what we're going to focus on, the button assignment level. If you guys remember, the gun has a trigger, a left and a right button, right? So we will configure it to perform just like a mouse. So here is the trigger, boom, right there. So we're going to make that trigger behave like a mouse left click. Now there's a left button, this button right here. When you click that, we will make that button behave like mouse middle. And over on the right side, when that button is pressed, it's gonna behave like a mouse right click. So it's essentially, this light gun is now like a mouse. So let's just check out the sensor view. There, oh shoot, you see that right there? There's that pink dot, kind of like what I showed you guys earlier. Now, watch me move the gun up, left, right, down. You see that sensor moving? Yeah, disregard that mouse pointer for a second and just kind of focus on that red dot. So it's just saying that, all right, we can read the IR blaster very well. Now, if you go over to show data, oh yeah, look at that. The X and the Y values. Remember what I showed you guys earlier? How the gun can see the X and Y values. So pay close attention to that. Okay, so let's open up Windows Device Manager so we can make sure our gun is good, right? So once we got that opened up, we're gonna go down to mice and other points and devices. In there, you guys can see all this stuff that I've got plugged into my PC currently. The fourth one is actually the light gun, because I saw it earlier. So open that up. We'll go into details, change the property to hardware IDs, and you can actually see the hardware ID of this particular gun that I got plugged in. It's hexadecimal 1602. Okay, so give me 1 second. Now let me just close that up real quick. All right, so going to Microsoft's website, there is something known as an HID device class. It's in Microsoft's namespace for C# programming. So they kind of give an example here. This is a C# code that shows you an example of how to like basically scan through your Windows PC to enumerate all your HID devices. It's a way of scanning to see all the mice that's plugged in. So let me just look through here real quick. Now let's go back into this Aimtrak gun. Change that to hardware ID. So here's the hardware ID for the gun that I just plugged in. You guys can see it right there. So there's a PID, which is product ID, and there's a REV, this is 1602. These are the values that we're gonna use to, if I want to use a C# code to scan my PC and see what guns are plugged in. And once all that is done, you can basically start pulling data out of the gun and into the Windows driver. But this video is getting too long already, and yeah, I'm not gonna bore you guys with that. So if you go to Unity's asset store, there's this company called Raven Bots, and they have this product called multi-input. It's 25 bucks. Just did a quick search. Let me see. It's an extension library that adds support for multiple keyboards and mouse. So basically what this library does is it does what that DLL I showed you guys about a minute ago does. It just kind of like scans through your PC and reads all your mice and stuff. So let's just go through Unity real quick. All right, so let's launch Unity game engine. Let's just get that started up. So here's Unity up. Let me create a new project, 3D of course. Let me see here. So let me call this Arcade Guns. I think that should do it. Click on create. See if this thing starts up. Yeah, Unity does take a little bit of time to boot up, especially on Windows. Let's see what we got here. Okay. All right, so Unity is up. So here's one thing I like to do in Unity. This is completely personal. You guys don't have to do this. One thing I usually do is I like to have one main game object where everything else goes underneath. So you can see here I made this main application that holds everything else. So in there you see the camera, the lights, everything goes in there. All right, cool. Now let's go to package manager and let it load up for a second. Let's import the multi-input. See, there it is right there. So just kind of click on that. There's a multi-input based on your accent. Let's click that in, bring that in, make sure everything is in. So these are all the files that it comes with. Just click on that. See, that comes in. All right. Okay, cool. So it's in. Let's just take a look at this company, Raven Bots. They've got this clear documentation here, which was very well documented actually. It just kind of shows you how to go about using their library or their DLL file, however you want to call it. There's this iDevice, interface iDevice. They've got a lot of stuff in here. So it's got some input state class. You're gonna use that to read buttons and states of your mice and keyboard and all kinds of stuff. So now that I've got this main application, I'm just gonna go into make a new game object and just kind of name this. What should I call it? I think I called it input. Yeah, I called it input state. Now this input state, I'm gonna add that input library that I just brought in. That input state. Well, it's multi. They call it multi-input, but here they call it input state. So once that's in there, we're gonna write some code. So let me just make a new folder, call that scripts, and in scripts I'm just gonna make a new C# file, call that main application. All right, so let me just quickly drag this main application source code into my main application game object and just double tap that, bring up Visual Studio. And again, this is my little personal way of designing stuff. You guys don't have to do this. I just kind of like making things look clean, take out some unnecessary lines. I like to go with awake, start and update. And if you guys know anything about Unity, awake is called first, start is called next, and update just completely runs. Okay, now I import the Raven Bots name class. So I'll make some variables. So private iDevice, red light, and the blue light gun. Red light gun and blue light gun, because we're gonna need to read both of them. So right there you can see I declare both devices. Okay, now typically what I'll do is in awake, I'll make sure I'm running at 60 frames per second, and I'm gonna remove the mouse pointer. So when you're playing the game, you don't want that mouse pointer point all over the place, confusing your players. We just want our own custom cursors. So just remove the mouse pointer from Unity so it's not showing. All right, cool. So things are looking pretty clean here. Now here's next step. I need a way to actually reference the input state. So make that public real quick, and we'll just call that public input state reference. I think that's what we got there. Okay, that should be all set. So when we go back into our main application, we see this public input state reference, and as you can see, this input state contains that input script from the Raven bots. So we just drag that in there, and once that's in, this allows us to be able to communicate with that input state from our main application. So we actually can now, from our main application, communicate with this that input state. So all right, so where do we go from there? All right, so here I will create a quick method. This is basically an event that's gonna get fired when the input state finds all the devices that's connected into our Windows computer. So let's get that load up real quick. So there's this devices enumerated. Just start up a new event, drag in main application. You go into a function, main application function, and just quickly select that input state populated method that I put there. So now let's just go back to our Visual Studio. So from here, this function here is actually gonna get called when all the mouse, all the keyboards, all the light guns that's plugged into our computer gets found. So add a checkpoint, attach it to Unity, and then let's just click play, see what happens, and bam. All right, so our checkpoint just hit. So which means this input state populated method just got called. Let me just end that real quick, go back to Unity, and you guys can see all that stuff is all working good. All right, let's get let's get the show moving. So let's bring in system.link. I'm bringing in system.link so I can do some counting. Now let's go back down to this function, this input state populated function. What we'll do here is try to count all the devices that's plugged into this PC, because this is the first function that fires up once Unity runs. So let me just place this breakpoint right there and make sure I attach it to Unity, and just go back into Unity and click play. This thing's moving kind of slow, so please bear with me. All right, let's minimize this real quick. Click on play. Let me let it catch up a little bit. All right, bang, it just banged. So let me hover my mouse over it and see what we got here, all the devices. So there's count 13. So there are 13 input devices in this PC, and what do you know? Index 0 is the Aimtrak Lightgun, which is called Aimtrak mouse. And look at all these guys too. HID keyboard, Mission wireless. All right, so well, this is the one we're focusing on, Index 0. You can see all the properties too. The ID, the internal name, the Aimtrak mouse, product ID, Raven bots. Actually, you know what? Just to verify that I'm looking at the right one, let me just go into my device manager real quick. Guys, give me a second. All right, so HID mouse compliant. Let me just pop this open real quick because we actually looked at this earlier. Hardware IDs. Okay, so now you guys see this is the light gun, right? So it's actually hexadecimal 1602, right? That's the ID. Let's just make sure everything matches. The first one, open it up. There it is right there. Hexadecimal 1602. Well, it's D209 but 1602. All right, cool. Now let's plug in the second light gun just to verify and make sure that everything is working. Now let's just see how that works out. Okay, so back in the code, now we've got 14 devices, which is good. That's a good sign. Let me just look through it. So okay, so it's not always in the same index. One is in index 1, the other one is at index 9. Let me just take a look at it. So index 1, let's pop that open. All right, so there it is. ID. Okay, so this one is hexadecimal 1601. So this got to be the blue one. Here's the product ID. Just go back to number 9. Let's see what we got. Okay, hexadecimal 1602, and there's also the product ID. All right, cool. So this function is actually working. Once Unity gets fired up, it's loading up all the devices that we have. Now, next up, what I'll do is just go through every single device that's plugged into the PC, because sometimes you may never know. And what we'll do is, as we go through it, we'll check their product IDs. If it matches what we're looking for, then we'll take that device and basically just point it into our guns. So here is a for each loop that goes through the entire input state reference devices. And for each one that we go through, if we see that the product ID matches what we're looking for, we'll pick it up. That's basically what this little loop right here is doing. Alright, so here's the for loop. It's complete. We are looking for those devices with the product ID. Now let me just place a breakpoint and attach it to Unity and see if see if this code actually works, see if it does anything. Just click and play, let it get fired up a little bit, and bam, it just banged. So let me just kind of hover my mouse here at the light gun. Oh, perfect, look at that. So the red light gun is actually found. Here's all the information about it. You can see that's working. Let's put my mouse on the blue light gun, and you can see it's all populated, so it's not all null with nothing in it. You can actually see we got all the serial numbers, product ID. So here's one thing I'm actually gonna pay attention to. Here's the next part. There's something known as support and access, right? So it kind of lets you know what this device can do. As you guys can see, the mouse X up, mouse X down. That's because this gun is seen as a mouse. If you were a keyboard, you see lots of keys. Now let's go back into Raven Bot's documentations. Here they kind of show you all the accesses or axes that the device can support. So you guys can see all of this. Mouse left click, mouse right click, mouse paddle, paddle left stick. I mean, it's got a whole bunch of axes that different devices can support. Game controllers support something different. Mouses support something different. So everyone has something different that they support. So here's where we'll begin. Let me just kind of get a quick text on the screen here. And what I'm trying to do is print out the values that I'm getting. Let me just kind of bring in Unity UI engine real quick. So make it public text. Now this text is just, like I said, it's going to display the data that we're reading, just so we can make sure we're getting stuff. Now in the update function, I'm just gonna check for my red light gun, make sure it's not null. So I'm gonna create this variable called IR virtual axis, and I will call it infrared X position. So it's basically gonna get those values that comes from the IR camera, and to do that, I'll point it to my red light gun, and then I'll index it at mouse X, because the mouse X motion is the same thing as the infrared. So with that being there, I'm gonna take that text and just basically try to set it back to my infrared X position value to string. So this way I can actually see if I'm reading the correct values coming from that. So let me just fire this up really quick and just kind of point this text back into that axis value. Okay, cool. So let me just hit play and see what happens. Bring this gun, it says 0, we're not reading nothing. Let me just grab this light gun real quick. See what happens. All right, so now the value that you're seeing on the screen now is the infrared X value. Graphics I showed earlier with the X and Y axis. So this is it right there. Those numbers, they go into the IR camera and they go through the gun straight to the PC. So that's what we're looking at here, the axis values. So as you can see, when I point up and down, when I go away from the IR sensor, it goes out. Now some refining has to be done because that number is changing super quickly, but that's just a sample to let you guys know how that works. Okay, I added a second text to display the y-axis right there. So now we can see the x and y axis. All right, cool. Just label that real quick. Now for the next part, let's go for the buttons. Here's a new variable called trigger button. And so we're going to use the right gun device and input code. I'm sorry, input code at mouse left, because if you guys remember earlier, the utility that I used, I configured the trigger to be the mouse left. So let me just add a trigger button. So the trigger button is obviously going to be a 0. If you're not pushing it, if you're not pressing it, nothing is happening. It's going to be a 0. Once the value goes above 0, that means the user is clicking on it, or the trigger is being pushed down on. So here is an if statement, basically saying if the trigger button value is greater than 0, display the trigger text, which is, I'm just kind of setting it to active here, or else just basically set the trigger, turn off the trigger text. This will help us know when the trigger button is actually being pushed. Or you could just do it in one line, and just basically just say trigger text is that game object set active to just that boolean line right there. But I mean, I'm only doing this for readability, right? I'm going to take out that one liner. There's no time for fancy code. I'm just going to use this here so people watching this video can at least understand what's going on. No need for extra confusions. All right, cool. Let me just drag in this trigger text right here, put it right there. Paint it red. For red, just call it trigger. That's the text. Make it a little lighter. Okay, so here's the trigger text. Let me just drag it in real quick, and let's test it out, see what happens. So once Unity gets fired up, pull it up right here. You can see the X and Y axis values, and when I push that trigger, you can see the trigger text show up. It's working, looking nice. You like that, huh? All right, yeah, so as I push on the trigger, you can see the trigger text, displays, and it goes away once this value coming from the trigger. But now to make it a little bit more cleaner, let me just take this out. So as you can see there's a trigger button right there, which is basically reading the mouse left. And if that value is above 0, it will show the trigger text. If it's not, just take away the trigger text. So let me just take that out and just go back to the one-liner just to make it real simple. So now let me make the left and right buttons, and it's basically gonna be the same thing. Here's a new variable called that left button, and we're just gonna use mouse middle, because if you guys remember earlier from that utility that we had, I actually had to set the mouse, the gun left to the mouse middle, and I'm just gonna like copy and paste the same thing here. So the right button is pretty much gonna be mouse right, left is mouse middle. So we're just gonna test it out, make sure it works, just take a quick look at it. So here, ladies and gentlemen, is all the code you pretty much need to read data coming from this light gun: the x-axis, y-axis, the trigger, the left button, and the right button. So if you want to make a game, or if you want to make any interactive content, that's basically all you're gonna need. So now let's try out for the ultimate test. Okay, we're getting some X value, getting some Y value. Move left and right. Things are looking good. Try the trigger. Trigger's working. I push that trigger. You can see the trigger text. Now let's go for the left button, see if that works. And bam! Look at that. You like that? Okay, so that's working. Try out the right one. Right one's working too. Cool. Now I can actually press both of them at the same time, and you can see both of them show up. So all right, things are looking good. So let's try out a real game. Let's try out like an actual game. Now those XY values that I showed you guys earlier, I'm using that to update the location of that cursor. So as you aim up, you aim down, you see it's going on, everything's looking good. So now the data that comes from this particular red gun, I feed that into this red side. So this guy is actually that red pistol right there. So when you press the trigger, you can shoot. Ah, you like that. You like that. Now, like earlier, the calibration is still slightly off. That has to get worked on, but we can always do that later. Now, let's go back to some action stuff. Now, when you press this trigger, see that? You can shoot. this button right here is to reload. So when you press this, I'd reload. I got 15 guns back in the chamber, baby. Check that out. Now you can shoot. The right button on it is for switching guns. So I got the shotty, I got the semi. Now you just go sick. Check this out. Ooh, now I'm out of bullet. Let me just reload real quick. There you go, there you go. Now let me get the shotty. Let me switch. Oh, now I got the shotty. Let me reload that. Ooh. Oh damn, I missed that. Got it. Nope, missed it. Shit. Alright. So you can see that. Now, if you want to shoot the grenade, just press both the left and the right. Hit that. Ooh, the grenade comes out. Now, this is just basically showcasing what you can do with the data coming from the gun. The IR sensor X and Y axis is used for moving the cursor. The trigger, which is a mouse click, is used for shooting. The right button, or the left button, which is the mouse middle, is used for reloading, and the right one is used for switching guns. So you can just go ahead and make your own game, do however you want to do it, but as long as you can read that data coming from this gun, you should be all set. Now, the blue one, same exact thing, but it's just more on this side down. So when I move it, you can see the blue cursors moving because we're reading these guns separately. So you can shoot with that. Basically do the same thing. Now, for some added fun, you grab two guns and just go sick. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, hope you guys enjoyed it, and thank you so much for watching.